Hi, I'm Dr. Stephen Duncan, Director of Fine Arts for the Galveston Independent School District. We have a project currently where we are working with the Galveston Symphony Orchestra in the arts rather than in the music aspect. The symphony is going to be playing Berlioz' Symphonie Fantastique, the Fantastic Symphony by Hector Berlioz, and our students in the art classes will be trying to pull things from their mind, from what they hear, and put that onto the page in an art form describing part of what's going on. Now, if you're familiar with Berlioz' work, you know this will not be terribly hard to do. It's an incredibly vivid work of music. But if you're not familiar with it, let me give you a little background before you start your listening. Berlioz was working in Paris in the 1800s, and in December of 1830, his piece, the Symphonie Fantastique, was premiered in Paris with the largest orchestra in existence at that point in time. He called for more instruments and more sounds and more wonderful things to be able to present this than had ever been done before. Symphonies normally up until that time were 4 movements long. The first movement was fast, the second movement was slow, the third movement was in triple meter, usually being a dance, and the fourth movement was then fast again. Well, Berlioz starts off with 4 movements and then decides, because of the program, he's actually got a story going on, that it needs to go for 5 movements. So we have this extra movement. But let's talk a little bit about each one of the movements so that you can tell the students what's going on before they hear them. Movement number 1, he's an artist. And he's thinking about love. The first movement is entitled Reveries, Passions. And in his dreams, while he's thinking about the most wonderful woman who could possibly exist, he has all kinds of tossing and turning, and you'll hear like maybe he was in a storm or at sea, and he sees glimpses of this wonderful woman, and being a musician, he makes it into a melody. Da dee da dee da dee 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 dee. And you'll hear that melody in all 5 of the movements. We call it the idée fixe, or the fixed idea. And it's pretty much that he is obsessing over this beautiful woman who's a possibility in his dreams, and hoping maybe someday he'll find her. The second movement's title is Un bal, at a ball basically, at a dance. And you hear all of the standard music and the wonderful waltz sort of feeling for the music. And you can imagine a large number of people in beautiful dresses for the women and beautiful tuxedos for the men, dancing around, looking wonderful, having a great time. And suddenly, the oceans part, and he hears, da-dee, 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 dee. For he's caught a glimpse of her across the ballroom, and he's going to go, and they're going to take one another by the arm and dance and spin and have just a wonderful time at a ball. The third movement takes place outdoors, in a pastoral scene. People from big cities very often have idealized versions of what it must like to be a shepherd out in the fields, among the trees, and, well, frankly, it's the reason a lot of us go camping and fishing and hunting and out in the outdoors. But in this case, he envisions a shepherdess and a shepherd, played by an oboe and an English horn, playing back and forth to one another. One plays, then the other plays, then one plays, and then the other doesn't play back. Apparently, something's not quite all he wished it would be. Something happens between movement 3 and movement 4. Berlioz never tells us what it is, but something very important happens because we ended movement 3 in a pastoral scene, and we begin movement 4 with a march to the scaffold. You see, somehow he has been convicted of the murder of this beloved woman that he's been seeing and hoping to see, and he's now being marched off by the gendarmes, the police, to the top of the scaffold where Madame Guillotine will fall and relieve his shoulders from his head. Not the nicest of scenes, but as you see, there'll be some definite excitement going on. The crowd is all excited to see the execution that's going to happen. You'll actually hear him stepping up, mounting higher and higher on his way till he finally gets to the top, and everything pauses. And you hear, da-dee-da-dee-dee-dee-dee, jump, bonk, bonk, bonk. The head bouncing down the stairs, followed by ta-da of the crowd cheering. Kind of a strange place, but normally this would be the end, the fourth movement of a symphony. But that's not where Berlioz is going to leave it. And then there's movement 5, the dreams of a witch's Sabbath. Of course, when you've cut somebody's head off and it's fallen down the guillotine, that seems like it ought to be the end. But for Berlioz, there needed to be something else, something further. And so he takes our poor artist, who's lost the love of his life because he murdered her, to the logical place, which is not the good place. So when he arrives there, he sees the goblins and the monsters and the skeletons dancing and cavorting around and having a grand old time. And at one point you hear a melody which every person in the audience would have known. Pom 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 pom. The Dies Irae. Deus irae, Deus iliae, salve seculum in faville. Day of darkness, day of wrath, God has come to judge the world, and all will be dissolved in fire and flame. Little scary, but known to every single Frenchman because it was sung at every single funeral in France as a Catholic country. Still to this day, there are people, when you hear that melody, the hair on the back of their neck stands up. It's been in many, many movies, including The Shining. Now, if that's not bad enough, he also has the devils and the monsters and everything dance and cavort around. And they take the bow from the violin that normally would be played, and they turn it upside down so that the wood clicks against the string. And you get a click, 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 click. And that's supposed to be the sound of the skeletons dancing. So when you hear that, that's supposed to be the skeletons dancing. Now, of course, we need to hear our idée fixe, our fixed melody. But this time it doesn't sound da-dee, 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 dee. It comes in and goes yeah, 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 yeah. On this little tiny E-flat clarinet plays way up high. Really, really brittle sound, sort of like it could peel the paint off the wall with this sound. And of course, that means that there his beloved, the woman he thought was so wonderful, is the head witch leading all the dancing. And eventually you have all of the dancing music and the Dies Irae and bells chiming midnight all happening at the same time for the end, where he's going to switch it all back to a major key and give us a happy ending. Berlioz, Symphonie Fantastique.